Is the US President Donald Trump in trouble? Are there talks of impeaching him before his term ends in 2020? The fire that triggered the smoke is this article, an op-ed published in the New York Times, reportedly by an anonymous insider in the Trump administration. These lines were interpreted as the whispers of a resistance movement within the White House. It indicated how some of Trump's top advisors viewed their president, and that they are quietly working to end his term before the time comes.
The latest act of resistance is the op-ed published in the failing New York Times by an anonymous, gutless coward.
They say they're to protect the steady state. They're to protect the country from Donald Trump. Okay? This is very clear. This is a coup. Okay? It's not Steve Bannon saying that. That's what the authors of the letter say.
While the article kicked off a witch hunt to find who wrote it, questions were raised whether the 25th Amendment is likely to be evoked to start the complex process to remove Trump. So what is the 25th Amendment, and what is the complex process of removing a sitting president? The 25th Amendment was ratified on February 10, 1967, and it has its roots back in 1965. President John F. Kennedy's assassination brought a major question. How would things be if he had survived but was unable to function as a president? That is when the Congress was forced to do something about it, and the final outcome was the 25th Amendment, which was passed into law in 1967 after 51 states ratified it. The amendment has 4 sections. The first section mentions that if the sitting president were to resign or dies, then the vice president would take his place immediately. The second section clarifies that when there is a vacancy in the office of vice president, the president shall nominate a replacement. The third section allows the president to temporarily hand over his responsibilities to the vice president after informing the president pro tempore of Senate and Speaker of the House of Representatives. The fourth section provides a multi-step process for the vice president and the cabinet to declare that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. The process ultimately requires a 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress.
So there are 2 broad processes. One is initiated by the US Congress, where any of the houses of US Congress which feels that the president is not fit to carry out his responsibilities, then moves to impeach him. And they'll do hearings. At the end of it, they will cast a vote. And if there's majority support for impeachment in one house, then it goes to the next house. Once both houses have voted to impeach him, then the president stands impeached. So that's one process. The other process is something initiated not in Congress, but by the president's cabinet.
So what is the complex process, and what will happen if it is used? First off, the vice president as well as 2/3 of the president's cabinet would have to write a declaration to the president pro tempore of the Senate that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. In which case, the president would immediately step down and the vice president would take his place. But the amendment allows the president to write a counter declaration, basically saying that he is in fact able to perform his duties, which would immediately make him the president again. Now the vice president, along with the majority of the cabinet, can provide another written declaration within 4 days, reiterating their concern, and the vice president will be back as the president.
Once they've done that, they have to go for endorsement to the Congress. And that's a far more complex process, because the president who is sought to be removed can also challenge that in the Congress.
The Congress would then have to gather within 48 hours and vote within 21 days. It would require votes of 2/3 of the members of both the houses and the Senate to remove the president, allowing the vice president to take up the post.
If there is to be any serious impeachment, it has to come from the House, from the US Congress, And that too will be more likely only if there are more revelations that come out in the days and months to come.
Currently, no such threat is realistic for Trump. But will this political controversy snowball into something bigger? Will this adversely impact Trump's ratings?
As of now, there are no indications that this article has in any way affected his ratings or the core support that he has. Because if you look at it, this article doesn't really stand on its own. It follows a series of articles or publications that have come out about Trump. Recently, there was also the book brought out by Bob Woodward, Fear. Before that, another book written by somebody who had worked with him closely in the administration, Omarosa. And then even before that, Fire and Fury by Michael Wolff. So despite all this, and all of them paint a very similar picture of lot of disagreements, controversies within the White House, a lot of unpredictability in the White House, and that systems, processes are not quite working. But despite all that going on for some time, his core base remains with him, because the reasons that they voted him in, where they felt that he would address from their point of view issues related to unemployment, growth in the economy, they feel that those are still being addressed.
Impeachment or not, Trump has woken up to the possibilities of a midterm election, and he has already started to play the situation to his benefit.
As of now, all indications are that he is going to survive, unless the Mueller investigation comes up with something which is really damaging. Because within the Congress, there are deep divisions. If you look at the nomination for the Supreme Court judge, again, which has also become controversial, but the Republican senators essentially remain with the nomination. So there is a partisan divide, and within the US Congress, while the Democrats are calling for some action against Mr. Trump, potentially some talk of impeachment, the Republicans oppose that. And they oppose it because they know that the core base of the Republican Party is today with Mr. Trump. And if they are seen as coming out against Mr. Trump, then they will lose in the midterm elections.
We will impeach, but I say, how do you impeach somebody that's doing a great job, that hasn't done anything wrong? Our economy is good. How do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it? We will impeach him, but he's doing a great job. Doesn't matter. Remember that line. He's doing a great job. That doesn't matter. We'll impeach him.
But the big question is, will he succeed?